This is my first video blog that I've committed to make, and I wanted to talk about the mind-blowing realizations that I've had around dyslexia over the last couple of days. What's it? 4 days ago. 4 days ago I began to suspect seriously enough to actually have it more than a passing thought that my daughter was dyslexic, because we've been homeschooling and she's been struggling with her reading and writing, and she did something that made me go, I wonder if she's dyslexic. And dyslexia is something that I have known nothing about. That I don't know, most people seem to know not very much about it, but my thing was you get your letters back the front and it makes you not be able to read. And I remember coming down to the computer to look up, do some research, and thinking, oh, that's right, I remember listening to the radio once and listening to a university professor talking about her dyslexia and going, oh, that sounds like me. I should look up something and just put it out of my mind. And I came down to look up the symptoms of dyslexia and see what I should be looking out for, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, not only is this completely my daughter, but it's absolutely myself. And so I got on, called my mum to have a chat with her and go, I think that Miller is dyslexic, and went to recount to her a time in my high school. I was talking to her about how I felt really an immense pressure reading aloud at school, and I just wanted to keep it really light and surface, and as I went to recount this memory, I started sobbing so deeply. I was so upset. I was ugly crying from the bottom of my soul. I mean, it felt really good, but there was so much torment there and there was so much angst. And that continued all evening. I was just like starting to realize just how much pain and how much torment I had put myself through during school. And I'd always done really well at school, but I'd had a lot of support from my mum. My mum was studying a Bachelor of Education through my high school years. She'd always wanted to be a teacher. And I think she had the flu when she did her, what was then matriculation, and she had new migrant parents and they didn't know about special exemptions and things like that. Anyway, she ended up failing and never going on to become a teacher until many years later. So I got the benefit of her immense skills. She's an incredibly gifted teacher and an incredibly empathetic teacher. So she sat with me and helped me with many things, and I had many tutors along the way, but never was it ever suggested that it was dyslexic. So here is an amazing woman that has helped me navigate a mainstream school system and not know that I was dyslexic. Yeah, underlying my school journey was this immense feeling of torture, pain. Like, it was just immensely painful. And the idea that schooling didn't feel like that has just been, to a lot of people, has been completely mind-blowing to me. I mean, I put myself through that. I have 2 degrees, and I decided that life was too short for that sort of torture halfway through a master's degree, where I just went, no, I just cannot do that anymore. I don't want to force my brain to do it. It is excruciating to write an essay for me. But as I started to realise and started to feel into just exactly what it is to be dyslexic, I realised that my entire life, the career I've built for myself is completely founded around the skills of a dyslexic brain and a dyslexic mind. That is to hold the bigger picture and to contemplate the bigger picture and to draw correspondences and to bring together disparate information into a cohesive whole and set a path for solutions. I do fall apart when it comes to the steps to implementing those, but that's not my skill set. The thing that's been making me really excited has been that as I've had this realization, I feel like my brain is expanding and rewiring itself, and maybe some of those dyslexic tendencies are actually increasing at the moment. But what I really want to do is I want to explore the possibility of how do we educate or work with children and adults or people with dyslexia, particularly children, because I'm not sure about, well, let's go to adults later, but children, how do we work with them so that they can not find themselves crippled within the school system? How can we utilise the incredible gifts of that amazing imaginative thinking process, the amazing travelling? It's like, certainly with myself, I can set my mind travelling into all dimensions of a problem, of space. It's like I do a meditation, a visualizing meditation at the drop of a hat. So whilst I'm speaking to you now, I'm visualizing out into the cosmos or following the energy flow around the world. So I started thinking about the importance of dyslexic imagination for helping to create the new energy grids and the energy networks that we're needing to develop around the world to connect and to be interconnected with everyone, so that there's interspecies connection, and how thought creates reality, and dyslexic minds can combine thought with emotion and that intensely vivid imagination. We have got an incredible gift there that is being absolutely underutilized, absolutely squashed. And it really shocks me, because I've looked into the statistics in terms of how many people at risk in our society are dyslexic, and the statistics that I have found so far, I haven't managed to corroborate them, but I have heard them in a number of places, but I would like to cite the references for them. But 60 to 70% of juvenile delinquents or children in juvenile detention are dyslexic. So 50% of adolescents undergoing drug and alcohol rehab are dyslexic. 35% of high school dropouts are dyslexic. And yet, something like 1 in 4 of the most influential people in our time, perhaps even more, are dyslexic. Was it 1 in 2 NASA rocket scientists are dyslexic? But we've got the likes of Socrates. Now I have to write a list, so I can't do it. So we've got Einstein, we've got Newton, we've got Alexander Graham Bell, we've got George Washington, we've got Tom Cruise, Orlando Bloom, Walt Disney, Johnny Depp, Whoopi Goldberg, Stephen Hawking, Steve Jobs, Steven Spielberg, Richard Branson. Like, the list of famous dyslexics is incredible. And I mean, I guess, yes, I'd love to compare a list of famous people who were not dyslexic with a list of famous dyslexics, because just recounting those can be a bit skewed, given that dyslexia is so common. Between 10 and 20% of the population, depending on what which facts you're looking at. But it's really, really common, so that could be a bit skewed. But given how poorly dyslexia is treated at the moment, the fact that these people have achieved anything is quite miraculous. So I'm wanting to ponder how we might be able to change the way we look at educating people with dyslexia so that they can learn to read and write, but they are not squashing their own natural, innate, incredible imaginative ability at the same time. And something I was musing with today was triggered by something. The other day I took a photo of myself, and I was just really struck by how the two halves of my face were completely different. And then I realised today that it's actually it seems to be a bit of a symptom of dyslexia, in that people are very tend to just look through one eye. They tend to just look through their right eye because they are so right-brained. And I'm like, well, what would happen if we made people read with their left eye? And I was doing that, and firstly I had things jumping all over the page, and I could feel my left brain sending the information to my right brain to process it. But then I could feel it stop and something change, and reading become very different, where I wasn't sub-vocalizing and I was just absorbing the information. And that was completely a bit of an epiphany for me, because I've never ever done that. I've always sub-vocalized, and I've tried to stop myself sub-vocalizing in the effort to read faster, and I just have not known how you could possibly read without sub-vocalizing. I've only learnt yesterday that this sub-vocalization is actually how dyslexics learn to read. They can't actually read any other way using the right brain. And every time you're saying the word, so you're reading the word, you're saying the word inside your head and creating a picture of that word before you're going on to the next word. So reading is a really, really slow process like that, even though when a dyslexic naturally thinks in their visual picture language in their head, it is 10,000 to 50,000 times faster than thinking in words. I've heard that statistic mentioned a lot of places. I haven't seen it written down, and I'm not actually 100% sure how the other world actually think, because I don't think like that. And it's really quite difficult to understand your thought processes of how you're actually thinking. I remember being completely blown away by the fact that there's a percentage of the population that don't have an inner dialogue. And then, because I consider myself to have an inner dialogue, but exploring this dyslexia thing, I'm like, well, predominantly I actually have a picture dialogue going on, not an auditory dialogue, but occasionally I do have a narration of my pictures. So, and then I'm like, oh, so some people don't have pictures? This is just like, it's just really, it's really interesting. But what I do know is that all these different ways of thinking allow people to be uniquely positioned to excel in particular things. So why on earth do we have an education system that doesn't acknowledge people's gifts, people's talents, and people's uniqueness? And how can we start to create a change so that people don't hate their life, people don't feel tortured living the life that they are living, that people can actually start to use the incredible gifts that they've come here with, that they can actually live with joy and passion and insight and wonder, and imagine what the world would be like if that change started. Imagine how quickly the world could change if we started bringing up our children to actually play to their gifts, embrace what it is that they do well, and do it with love and joy. I remember bizarrely thinking whilst I was at school that I shouldn't do the things that I found easy because that was a cop-out. I should work to develop my whole self, so I should do subjects that I find hard. And I guess that was now thinking about it, that was actually what was happening to me through my entire schooling, in terms of I was being forced to communicate in a way that was really, really difficult. In some ways I'm incredibly grateful because I do really like to write. I feel an immense, I'd much prefer to talk, but I feel the immense draw to communicate, to share knowledge, to share wisdom. And up until now, it hasn't been so easy. Just sit down and record a video to your phone and then post it out to the world. So writing has been the way. But you know what? We're actually shifting away from the need to have our brains turned inside out by that written word if we don't need to. And I've been pushing my daughter that she needs to learn to read, and yet, you know what, if I actually think about it, it's probably quite, can't think of the word, for something that's on the way out. It's really had its day. I mean, if we really think about how much is actually read these days, 95% of it is garbage. And yet, I'm sure there's amazing science journals that are very, very useful, and I do like reading science journals. I find them quite useful, but I don't need to read incredibly well to be able to read an abstract and to seed my imagination and to begin to explore possibilities. But I don't want to make I don't want to take the opportunity away. I feel like I'm really, really stuck because I don't want to take the opportunity away from my daughter to develop her reading and her things, but I also want her to see her blossom and excel. I mean, she has the most incredible gift with language. Her vocabulary puts me to shame, and has since she was 3 years old. Yet the struggle that she's having with learning to read and write is crushing that glorious storytelling vocabulary. So, I mean, I have resisted sitting her down in front of some sort of dictation device for less that she goes, well, I don't need to read and write. But am I doing her an injustice? Like, we have the capacity to not actually need to do it. She could just sit down and dictate those stories. She could have something, read her the words. So I guess I'm just musing out loud and hoping that through recording my observations of the world that I can help to find some clarity for myself, that I can help to share the way that I see the world, share the insights, and hopefully start to make some change. I'm really, really keen to explore this dyslexic meditation on New Earth grids, because that is just so. I always thought that everyone could hold an image of our Earth, hold the sensation of boundless and love and gratitude and joy. It's not really gratitude, it's joy, love and joy and reverence in our heart, and then visualize that light spreading around the world in these networks, and to then visualize other people starting to join that and spread into that. And I hold that vision really, really, really strongly. And the idea that actually doing that is not a skill that is at least common is quite mind-blowing. But you know what I want to do? I want to be able to teach that to people, and I want to link up with the people that find that really easy and develop it and work with it. Okay, so that's my musings for today. Had a beautiful morning and a beautiful evening, bookended by an almost full moon. Woke up this morning to the full moon shining in my window, and woke up my daughter, and we went outside and looked at the moon and chatted together for a bit, and then did the same thing before their bedtime tonight. So that was really, really lovely. And yeah. Have I got anything else to muse about? I don't think so. We will chat again tomorrow night. Okay, bye. Lots of love.